pretty good idea how it could go. I think there's a pretty good chance that the Eagles could be playing in Green Bay next weekend.
Wow, we got positivity.
We are the Mac and Mac Birds 365 guys, McMullen and McDonald. We've got a helping hand joining us now from the Delaware News Journal. Martin Frank hops aboard. Martin, you were ready. I saw you waving papers there. Have you figured out who's going to win this football game? Do you have it written down as to how this football game's going to go on Sunday?
I have a pretty good idea how it could go. I think there's a pretty good chance that the Eagles could be playing in Green Bay next weekend.
Wow, we got positivity. I'm glad, Martin, because I'm not too positive about it, and I think I'm more positive about it than Jody. So why are you looking at this as a chance for the Philadelphia Eagles to shock the world, like Jesse Ventura once did in the state of Minnesota?
Well, a couple of reasons. You look at the Buccaneers, like the last 4 games, and during that time they lost Chris Godwin, their all-star, all-pro wide receiver. Antonio Brown walked off the field, left the team, got released. And Brady hasn't been the same since then. Yeah, he still has weapons. He still has a guy named Mike Evans. He still has Rob Gronkowski and Brashad Perryman and guys like that. But he lost a lot when Godwin tore his ACL. And in that game, they got shut out 9-0. They were also losing to the Jets until like a last-minute rally in the fourth quarter. That was, I think, on January 2nd. And,
game. Yeah,
what's that?
That was a bad game.
Yeah, and, they crushed the Panthers this past week. But, it's the Panthers. They were pretty much done anyway. So, I think they're a little bit vulnerable. I mean, I think it's going to be a close game either way, but I think if things break right for the Eagles, they could pull it out. I mean, when they first played Tampa Bay in October, they weren't really running the ball. Miles Sanders had 1 carry for 1 yard at halftime, which somebody should have knocked Nick Sirianni over the head. Like, what are you doing and stuff? And I mean, they're a totally different team from that. I mean, Jordan Mailata was playing right tackle because Lane Johnson was away. Andre Dillard was playing left tackle. And the defense was, was a disaster back then. I mean, Brady was picking them apart. I mean, it's possible he could still do that, but he doesn't have 2 of his main weapons. So, I think there's a chance. I think if things break the right way, Miles Sanders if Miles Sanders plays, they got a really good running attack, and they're going to use it. And the weather could be kind of, rainy and windy, very windy, right? I think it's supposed to be
20 to 30.
So
yeah,
that could affect the passing game. I mean, the Eagles could have a chance.
All right, Martin, I'm going to play partial devil advocate here. You said about the 2 wins toward the end of the season over Carolina. Yeah, but it's the Panthers, which I get. It's the Panthers.
Right.
How about the Eagles' 9 wins this year? Which one do you not say, yeah, but in front of?
Yeah, that's a good one. I mean, there definitely is that. I mean, you look at a lot of things like that. I mean, earlier in the year, they were getting shredded by good quarterbacks, and they hadn't played a good quarterback in the last 9 games. I
Except
get that.
Dak, and that doesn't count because it was the varsity against the JV.
Right. But, I mean, it was still, Dak going against the Eagles defense, and he shredded them and stuff. But, yeah, like you said, it was the JV. Yeah, I mean, there's still that possibility. I mean, I'd like to think the Eagles defense is better, though, than they were when they first played the Bucs. And, yeah, I mean, Brady could still have a big game and everything, but he doesn't have the same weapons that he had back then. I know Gronkowski didn't play, but he still had Godwin. He still had Antonio Brown. He had Mike Evans. And, it just hasn't been the same. So I'd like to think the Eagles defense has gotten a little bit better since then, and the Bucs offense has gotten a little bit worse. So maybe there's a middle ground where they can kind of keep them under control, at least keep the game close enough where they'd have a chance to win. And you take into account the 20 to 30 mile an hour winds could affect Brady's passes.
Okay, Martin, I'm going to jump in with Jody and play a little devil's advocate as well. You mentioned, and no question, I mean, I think people forget how big Antonio Brown was in that game against the Eagles. He was pretty dominant, and obviously he's gone off the rails. And he mentioned Chris Godwin, who's his big third down, sort of moved the chains guy or had been. So there's no doubt that they've lost some of their top tier playmakers. But one guy they haven't had and who looks like he's coming back, we mentioned Miles Sanders in Philadelphia, is Leonard Fournette, as they call him down there, playoff Lenny. And I just found out today that Leonard Fournette in his last 6 playoff games has scored a touchdown in each, and he's got 8 over that entire span. So Tom Brady's getting him back. And, you know, as you mentioned, he didn't have Gronk in the first game in week 6. Now Gronk is amping up. He's had 250 plus receiving yards over the past 2 weeks. He doesn't have the same guys. He's got different guys, but he's still got some playmakers.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, Tom Brady is a good quarterback. He's the best of all time. Some people call him the GOAT. So, yeah, I mean, you know, Brady's been in all kinds of these situations before, and that's, you know, another thing. The Eagles' defense, you know, they might try disguises and, you know, whatnot, but Brady has seen all that. He knows how to pick it apart, and, you know, maybe he will. I mean, it's very possible. I mean, you know, the Bucs have a great offensive line, and the Eagles didn't touch him at all the last game, and they might not touch him again, although they need to if they want to win. But yeah, I mean, it's still very possible the Bucs could, you know, put it all together. But I just think in this one game and everything, the Eagles have a lot of things working in their favor, and that includes the fact that, you know, they don't have Godwin, they don't have Antonio Brown. The weather could be pretty bad, you know, to affect the passing game. And if the Bucs have to become a running team, you know, that's not their strength either. I mean, Leonard Fournette is effective because teams have to focus so much of their attention on their big play receivers. And it's possible that, you know, if they have to run the ball, I don't know if Fournette's that guy who's going to get 100 yards on the ground, unlike the Eagles, where if they can run the ball effectively, and they should, then maybe that keeps Brady off the field too, and he doesn't have as many chances.
All right, Martin, you're right. This Eagle team that'll be playing on Sunday is not the same Eagle team that got beat by the Bucs back in week number 6. We certainly know the difference on offense. They made a concerted decision and change from a pass-heavy offense to a run-heavy offense, and it has worked famously for them. You said you also believe the defense is better. Why?
I just think that they've had more time to learn Jonathan Gannon's system. I mean, when they played the Buccaneers, it was back in week 6, and, you know, he wasn't really blitzing as much. He wasn't really making adjustments on the fly. And I think as the season went on after that, he started doing both things a little bit more. I mean, he showed different looks. He disguised more. He sent more blitzes. No, he didn't become blitz-happy defensive coordinator or anything like that. But, I mean, I think they were more effective in that. And like, you know, we've been saying earlier, maybe all of that is a product of playing against really bad quarterbacks and bad teams. And maybe that made them look better than they are. I mean, that's the big unknown going into Sunday. We're going to find out if the defense really is that much better, or if they've just been playing so much inferior competition that, you know, it had to be that way. So, yeah, I mean, but I do think they're better. I mean, Darius Slay has been awesome this year. He's been a Pro Bowl. You know, he was named to the Pro Bowl and is definitely deserving of that. You know, the defensive line has gotten better. Fletcher Cox kind of has played better in December. You know, Hargrave has been great pretty much all year, except for like he had a middle of the season kind of lull. You know, Sweat has been good. I mean, he's been out all week and hasn't practiced all week, but I'd like to think that he'll play. I mean, and, you know, Barnett's been up and down, but, you know, he could have a big game as well. So I just think they're better overall, and I think, you know, if things work their way, they could win.
For people who are obsessed with the pass rush, and let's be honest, that's most of Philadelphia, Martin, because they have a history, and we can go back to Buddy Ryan if you want to go back to Marion Campbell, and all the way up to Bud Carson and Jim Johnson. They want a pass rush. They want a pass rush. They want aggression. You're not going to get to Tom Brady. I mean, there are certain quarterbacks. Peyton Manning was like this as well. You're not going to sack him a lot. He's too smart. He processes too quickly, gets the football out of his hands. So how do you combat that? I want you to put your JG hat on and wish me a happy Tuesday and tell me how the heck do you combat that? Because you're not getting to the guy. You're not sacking the guy multiple times. Now, you could do it in a big moment like Brandon Graham did and win you a big game, but you're not going to do it consistently. So how do you get to that point where you can make the big splash play in one moment to win a football game?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. And I mean, a lot of teams have been trying to figure that out for the last 22, 23 years. But basically what you have to do is maybe not necessarily sack Brady, but you have to make him get rid of the ball. Now, he's also great at getting rid of the ball, like quickly in 2.5 seconds or less. So, you have to pretty much put pressure on Brady. So he's kind of like off his spot. He's making an off balance throw. He's getting rid of the ball before he really wants to. And, you have to stop his checkdowns because he's great at that. If he's not able to throw deep, then he's going to look for, Gronk underneath. He's going to look for Fournette or Giovanni Bernard, who's probably coming back this week as well. Those guys are good receiving running backs and everything like that. So, yeah, it's hard. And if he does complete his checkdowns, you got to hold those guys to maybe 7 or 8 yards and keep them from getting like 12 to 15, running after the catch and all that. It's a tall order, to be sure, but that's another thing that you have TJ Edwards, who's been playing a lot. I don't think he played at all in the first game. I think it was Eric Wilson and Alex Singleton.
He was in the mix, but he was a rotational player at that point.
It's going to take a total team effort, and I just we'll find out, I guess, is the big question. I mean, obviously you can't really stop Brady, but you can do things to limit his effectiveness. If he's completing like 5, 6, 7 yard passes as opposed to 12 to 15 to 20 and everything like that, the Eagles will be happy with that. I mean, even if he is still completing a high percentage, which he typically does, but at the same time, you got to make him uncomfortable, and maybe that's not sacking him because obviously he doesn't get sacked very often. I think he's only been sacked 22 times this year, something like that. But you do have to put pressure on him. You can't let him stand there all day and, find his guys because he'll pick you apart that way.
Martin, good news, bad news scenario. The good news is the Eagles are 6-3 on the road this year. That's a pretty damn good road record, considering they were 3-5 at home to go 6-3 on the road. Pretty impressive. The problem is Tampa's 7-1 at home this year. So the Eagles have proven they can win away from the link, but the Bucs have also proven they're pretty darn tough in their home stadium. The crowd. I've said this a couple times already here on Birds 365 this week. I think Eagle Nation is one of the best fan bases in the entire National Football League, and they take their act on the road. A lot of Eagle fans love getting away to road games, playoff games, since they had no playoff games last year. They'll be up for this one. What kind of a Eagle occupation do you think is going to go on percentage-wise in the crowd in Sunday's game?
Well, it's an interesting question because A, Eagles fans, like you said, like to travel, and B, they love to travel to Florida and the Tampa Bay Clearwater area they're very familiar with because obviously they go down there every spring for Philly spring training. So I think there will be a lot of Eagles fans there. I'm not sure if all of them are going to be getting into the game because I think the Bucs fans show up too. So you could see maybe 20%. I'd like to think, and that's that's a good number.
Not terrible.
Yeah, all things considered,
Yeah.
because I'm sure it's going to be hard to get a ticket. I mean, the Buccaneers have been playing so well, obviously, that they sell out all their games now and stuff. But the Eagles fans will be down there. They'll be in the parking lots. They'll be out at the beaches. They'll be, all over Tampa Bay or Tampa, Saturday night and everything, Sunday morning. You'll see them. They might not all get into the game, but they'll be there.
Yeah, they definitely will. And they'll be on my flight. So no Fly Eagles watching. And yours as well, Martin.
Mm-hmm.
I want to give you credit for this, Martin, because you're the first person I think I saw who noticed it, at least. And by the way, make sure you read Martin at DelawareOnline.com, Delaware News Journal. In the Eagles game notes this week, they had a little bit of fun with the puns, flower power section, fertile ground game, sprouting offense, defensive yard work, hurts so good, SOW, not your garden variety birds. They had a lot of fun putting together the notes this week. But we talked about Nick Sirianni and his turnaround. And we've said first playoff game for Jalen Hurts as a starting quarterback. Well, this is the first playoff game for Nick Sirianni as a head coach. And he's going against a guy who's done it before at a high level, and Bruce Arians. So there's an experience gap there. Not to mention Todd Bowles, the defensive coordinator down there, Byron Leftwich. Guys are getting head coaching interviews all over the place. What do you see in this coaching matchup? We're saying Hurts versus Brady. How about this young coaching staff against maybe the deepest coaching staff in the NFL?
Well, I mean, you could see that Nick Sirianni is blooming into a decent head coaches here. I mean, you look at the I think there were 7 head coaches who were hired last year. I mean, Sirianni is the only one of them in the playoffs. He and Brandon Staley, I think, are the only 2 who had a above 500 record. So, yeah, I mean, Arians has been around forever. I mean, even before he became a head coach, he was an assistant with the Colts. He was an assistant with the Steelers on their Super Bowl teams, like in the 2000s. So, yeah, that's a big, Arians has the experience advantage, just like Tom Brady has it over Jalen Hurts. But, you look at Sirianni has definitely improved as a coach. He's got the guys believing in him with his flower power. And, I mean, that's what you need. I mean, the veterans had to buy in for the Eagles to be a success this year. And to a man, I mean, Kelsey, you look at Lane Johnson, even Fletcher Cox. I mean, he had his issues with Jonathan Gannon early in the season. He's a big believer. I mean, those guys have been to the Super Bowl before. Those guys have been in a bunch of playoff games, and they have that kind of experience that they can share with the younger players and everything like that. And, it's kind of like the same with Sirianni. I mean, yeah, he's a first-time head coach, but he's been in the playoffs before with Frank Reich in Indy, and I'm not sure if he made the playoffs with the Chargers. He might have.
Yeah, he had to, 1 or 2.
Yeah,
because he mentioned he's in 7. He was in 7 play-in games, so he's been there with the Chiefs under Todd Haley, Chargers, Colts. But head coach, it's a little bit different. And obviously, first for Jonathan Gannon, Shane Steichen's been a coordinator before, but when you look at the experience on the other side, it's not as damning as the quarterback versus quarterback, but it's still a pretty wide gap as well.
Right. And one thing about the quarterback situation is Jalen Hurts has never played in an NFL playoff game, but he's played in 2 national championship games, and he's been to the college football playoffs a 3rd time when he was at Oklahoma. So, it's not like he's never been in a big game before. He's just never been in an NFL playoff game.
Yeah. And in some ways, the national championship is bigger than a wild card, even a super wild card weekend.
Martin, I've got a crystal ball question for you. You point out that Tom Brady is down a couple of his key weapons from earlier in the season, and that's accurate. The guy went out a really good year before getting hurt, and Antonio Brown might be the biggest whack job in the National Football League, but he produced against the Eagles, as a matter of fact, in that Thursday night game earlier this year. So if you look at the Bucs now, their two main receiving threats are Mike Evans and Rob Gronkowski. If you look at the Eagles, their two main receiving threats are Devonta Smith and Dallas Goedert. Taking those four out of the mix, what other receiver on either team has a chance to make a big play? Maybe the deciding play in this game. The Bucs are reduced, but the Eagles haven't been great all year other than their top two. Who's the guy who's going to step up and be big?
You know, that's an interesting question because they are kind of similar in that respect, in that like each team's best receivers are a top receiver and then B, a tight end. But I mean, the Bucs are also deeper at tight end. I mean, they have Cameron Brate, they have OJ Howard, so they can hurt you with like three different tight ends. And Brashad Perryman has been around the league. I mean, he's a good receiver as well. I mean, he's definitely better than, the second and third receivers for the Eagles and Jalen Reagor and Quez Watkins. So I would still give the Bucs the edge in that regard. I mean, they're just deeper than the Eagles at receiver. But I mean, Devonta Smith and Dallas Goedert can definitely hold their own against, Mike Evans and Rob Gronkowski. So I'm not saying they're as good as both of those as Evans and Gronkowski, but they're not, they're definitely in that range. So, but yeah, the Bucs definitely have a deeper receiving core even without Godwin and Antonio Brown.
It kind of mirrors, though, Martin. It kind of mirrors the Eagles in that way, as you mentioned. The Eagles' passing game, to a large extent, since they made the shift, has been Dallas Goedert, Devonta Smith, and maybe somebody else who get it every once in a blue moon. Right. The Bucs aren't that bad, but it's still now it's Mike Evans and Gronk. So how would you go about sort of dealing with that, as those are the two guys you have to stop? Right. And a lot of people say just put Darius Slay on Mike Evans, bracket Gronk. You could go the other way, though, and you could say completely shut down whoever the other receiver is, Brashad Perryman, Tyler Johnson with Darius Slay, bracket Mike Evans, throw a village at Gronk. How would you go about trying to stop those two dominant receivers on Tampa Bay?
Well, I would definitely put Slay on Mike Evans, and I would bracket Gronk and, see if guys like Scotty Miller and Perryman can beat you, because, Steve Nelson on the other side isn't bad either. He could pretty much take out the number two guy, or at least, be decent. But the one thing you mentioned is how, like, the Eagles and Bucs kind of mirror each other now with the, one wide receiver and one top tight end. But the difference is the Eagles also have the running game, so they're not as dependent on those, two guys to do everything as much as the Bucs are. I mean, if you take out Mike Evans and you bracket Gronkowski and you make it tough for Brady to, get the ball off as quickly as he wants to and everything, and, he doesn't have as many places to go with it. The Eagles, on the other hand, if you shut down Devonta Smith and you bracket Dallas Goedert, which teams have obviously tried to do in the last several weeks, well, you give the ball to Miles Sanders, you give the ball to Jordan Howard, you give the ball to Boston Scott. I mean, all those guys will be able to play. We're assuming Miles Sanders will be able to play, but I think he will. You have a totally different situation on your hands because the Eagles have exploited that, and the Buccaneers haven't proven yet that they can take advantage if you shut down their top two receivers or try to shut down their top two receivers. We're not sure yet exactly how they compensate for that because we haven't seen it.
Martin, a lot of times, most times, and rightfully so, we look at these matchups from the top down. Let me change the perspective, and sometimes you can pick up a nugget about this. The most embarrassing loss by each of these two teams The Bucs got shut out by the Saints just 4 or 5 weeks ago, 9-0. The Eagles just got beat by the dead in the water New York Giants in the last month of the season as well. Which is the more embarrassing loss?
Oof. They're both awful. I think the Eagles' loss isn't quite as bad because that was like 6 weeks ago, and they won they won 4 straight after that until the Cowboys game, which didn't really count. The Bucs were shut out on, I think that was the game where Godwin tore his ACL, right? I mean, it was like in the first half.
They lost a bunch of guys. They lost Fournette in that game.
Oh yeah, I think Evans left that game too.
Yeah. They lost they lost Fournette. They lost one defensive player. I can't remember. They lost a bunch of people in that game.
Yeah. I think Evans went out and somebody else too. Yeah, you're right. I mean, it was. But I'm not sure if the Bucs have fully recovered from that, I guess is the point I'm trying to make. Like, I saw them play, the game Antonio Brown left against the Jets. I mean, they were losing the entire game. I mean, they won in the last minute or two. I mean, that would have been an awful defeat. They had another tough game before that. They beat the Panthers in the last game, but the Panthers were pretty much done.
I hate to keep going back to this. You said the Eagles have won 4 in a row. Giants, Washington football team, Giants.
Yeah.
Same thing, right?
Yeah, and they were losing, I think, in each of those other games. Like they fell behind
Washington
to Washington, and they had their whole team depleted by COVID. That was like their 4th quarterback.
Yeah.
They fell behind the next week, I think, to the Giants. Was it also 10-0, and they came back,
and then they fell behind Washington,
and then they fell behind Washington again. Yeah, but Washington, both of those teams obviously aren't very good. So yeah, I mean,
but you bring up a good point, Martin, because if you get 10-0, if you get down 10-0 to the Washington football team with Garrett Gilbert, you're not going to panic because if your defense settles down. If you get down 10-0 to this team, it's not stopping. They're not going to not score again the rest of the game. So how important is it to stop that sort of recent trend of slow starts and get the lead against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers?
Oh, it's imperative. I mean, if you're down 10-0 to Brady in the first quarter, might as well start heading back to Philly because it's pretty much going to be over. And they absolutely can't get off to a slow start, which they have been doing the past, several games and everything like that. So, yeah, I mean, that's the one caveat to the fact of this being, this could be a close game and could possibly go in the Eagles' favor is you can't get off to a slow start. If you keep doing that like you did against Washington twice and the Giants, they're pretty much done. I mean, if Hurts has to become strictly a passing quarterback throwing 30 to 40 times, the Eagles can't win that. So
let me see if you're with me on this one, Martin. And it's kind of a preemptive protection of Nick Sirianni. The Eagles decided to go with their JV team last week. Although Nick at times seemed a little defensive when he was asked about all the guys on the COVID list. They got COVID. What do you want from me? It was a strategy, and it was a loophole that the Eagles used, and I think quite wisely myself. If they get beat by 2 touchdowns in this game, that the critics are going to be out en masse saying, why were the Eagles so stupid? They needed to stay at 4. They had won. Martin Frank told me they won 4 games in a row. Why didn't we make it 5? Why didn't we beat the Cowboys? They're going to be second-guessed all hell. If they either win or stay competitive, nobody's going to go. And, it was that smart move by the Eagles to keep all their players on the bench and throw the practice squad out there for the last game. It'll be much worse if they lose. They'll get crushed for it. They'll get minimal credit for it if they actually win. They do the right thing on Sunday by sitting as many guys as they did?
I think they did. Yeah, I agree with you, Jody. I think the thing is with you look at the NFL schedule. I mean, only one team gets a bye, and no, the Eagles weren't going to get a bye no matter what. But this is like the only chance to rest. If you have a spot clinch, this is the only chance to rest your players going into the playoffs. And you look at the guys who rest. I mean, Jalen Hurts has been playing the past month on a bad ankle. Miles Sanders had the broken hand. Yeah, they had a bunch of guys on COVID, but those guys were also banged up a little bit too, and probably, dealing with some kind of injury. I mean, a lot of those guys were veteran guys. Jordan Howard had the stinger. Boston Scott had been getting a lot of use lately and stuff. I mean, those guys probably needed a break. So yeah, I'm definitely on board with resting as many of those guys as you can. I mean, that's always the possibility that they can get blown out, and you can say, well, those guys were rested, they didn't keep the momentum going. But you look at it the other way. I mean, you look at the Dallas Cowboys when they played the Eagles, they had all those guys in until well into the third quarter, maybe the fourth, and you saw the hit that Dak Prescott took from Milton Williams in that game. I mean, I was surprised Dak Prescott got up from that hit. I mean, it was pretty tough. And what happens if you're a Cowboys fan and let's say, Prescott, sprains an ankle or like breaks a rib and he can't play this Sunday against the 49ers? And are all the Cowboys fans saying, Mike McCarthy, what are you doing?
Yeah, killed him.
Yeah.
If Dak is into the game this week, Mike McCarthy's a dead man.
I think that was a much bigger risk than what the Eagles did. I mean, I think what the Eagles did was smart. I think the Cowboys, fortunately for them, I mean, none of those guys got hurt, but they easily could have. And Dak took a pretty tough hit. I mean, and what's the point? I mean, Dak's played all year. Ezekiel Elliott has played all year. I think the only guys who sat out, key guys, were Tony Pollard, Trevon Diggs, Micah Parsons, and stuff like that. But pretty much all their guys played, and they definitely took a risk by doing it. And I hope it's worth it for them. But if they lose that first game to the 49ers, you can make the same argument like, hey, those guys never got a break. They were really tired. Why'd you play them against the Eagles? I mean.
Yeah.
I mean, there was a lot of Monday morning quarterbacking going on, so I guess we'll have to find out after Sunday how much that impacted it. But it could definitely go the other way too.
I guess nobody wanted to see Cooper Rush, Martin. Nobody, even Cooper Rush probably. But all right, Martin, we started this interview, and make sure you follow Martin on Twitter at MFrankNFL. Great Eagles beat writer for the Delaware News Journal, DelawareOnline.com. You said the Eagles had a chance. I'm going to pin you down. I don't want this chance. I think you might be trying to do a little psychological game because you don't want to go to Green Bay in January. Who's going to win this game? Eagles, Buccaneers. Pin you down. Not to have a chance. Who's going to win?
All right. Well, since I opened by saying, I think the Eagles can win, I will say the Eagles will win.
Wow.
And I think they're going to do it. It's going to be obviously a close game. I mean, but I think the weather conditions are going to have an impact. The wind is going to keep Brady's, passing ability down. I think the Eagles are going to be able to run the ball on the Buccaneers. And I know the Bucs have like the third best rush defense in the NFL. But, this is a totally different Eagles team, and they're healthy on the offensive line. Well, relatively. I mean, they got their main guys in the offensive line. So I think the Eagles can pull this out like 27-24. If the Eagles have to control the clock, obviously, and keep Brady off the field as much as possible. But I think not having his two main guys in Godwin and Brown, and not being able to run the ball as much, and the Eagles being able to keep the ball away from Brady, I think that's going to make the difference.
Well, then, Martin, you better give the long underwear to the wife to get ready for Green Bay next week, because if the Eagles win, you have the title down.
Yeah, I know.
He'll suck it up to keep working for another weekend season. Martin, great stuff. Thanks for coming on, buddy. We'll touch base again soon.
All right. Thanks for having me. Always a pleasure.
Our pleasure. Martin Frank, the first A lot of people are making the argument for the Eagles and pointing out the places where the Eagles might have an advantage from way back in week number 6 and what's happened with both teams, and rightfully so. Not that many are actually going so far that they're actually picking the Eagles to win. Give Martin Frank credit for that. He's picking the Birds to beat the Bucs. All right, we'll continue to talk about the big matchup next hour, about 25 minutes from now. We'll get our buddy Paul Domwich, Philly Mag and 33rd Team NFL, up with us here on Birds 365.